Hey, what's good, everybody? Thanks for hopping in the car with Christian Addiction Recovery, the channel where like minded individuals that face similar struggles can come so that we can learn and discuss new ways to live our best life possible and overall become the best versions of ourselves. Today, I wanted to talk to you about boundaries and how incredibly important they are if you're going to really live a life that's happy, but especially if you are trying to live a life of recovery. Okay. Now, boundaries are something that are fairly new to me. Obviously, we're kind of taught about boundaries growing up very, very loosely, as far as like, don't let people touch your private parts, things of that sort. Beyond that, I don't really believe that I ever really had boundaries. And I looked up the definition, and the one that really stuck out to me, there was two. The first one was obviously like a line that separates two areas, but this was the other one: a limit of a subject or a sphere of activity, and that's the one that really stuck out to me. Like the limit of a subject. To me, what it stuck out to me is have boundaries of what you shouldn't talk about, or what you don't want to talk about. For instance, when I was going to rehab, I had a mental break, and I went to rehab, and while I was there, people would talk politics and things like that, and that was one of the times I really started putting down a boundary. I don't want to talk about that here. Okay, we can't do anything about it. We're basically in jail for the next 30 days. So let's just focus on here. That was what I was telling them. So when I was at rehab, though, I really realized that's when I started realizing that, man, I don't have any boundaries, right? And I remember I had called my then wife, and she needed some money. And our marriage was pretty much dissolved at that point. But I called her, and she needed some money, and so I called my mom. They were kind of helping me run my business while I was in rehab, and again, that was one of those things. Like I knew I couldn't even mess with that when I was in rehab in order to begin new recovery. And I was pretty much ready to let my business completely go. Thank God my family kept it going for me, because it has been extremely important financially to myself. But I remember I called my mom, and she noticed something was wrong with me, and she said, "What's wrong?" Very nervous in her voice. Obviously, I'd been having a hard time for 24 years, so she, I had put my mom through a lot emotionally. But anyway, I could hear it in her voice. "What's wrong?" And I said, "Nothing. I just talked to my," and she said, "She triggers you." No offense, mom. I don't know if that's how you sound, but she said, she triggers you. And I said, "Well, so do you." And I hung up the phone. And that wasn't the best way to set my first boundary. But I believe I called my mom back and just said, "Mom, this is a new boundary for me. I don't want anybody raising their voice at me." And it kind of came with it's just when I started becoming more aware of myself and becoming more aware of what my values were, and really, as I connected with what my values were, my integrity to protect those values uh, increased, and it's boundaries that protect that integrity and those values. Okay. Now, there's many different boundaries, and we can use them in many areas of our life. One area that I really noticed boundaries making a difference was in my relationships, so my romantic relationships, we'll say. What happens in a romantic relationship, due to evolutionary psychology, a woman is always trying to select and make sure that her mate is going to be a good mate that's going to provide for her family or provide for her children and be a good role model, those types of things. Now, at the beginning of a relationship, a lot of this goes on subconsciously. Now, I don't say that there's women around just trying to test guys and test boundaries all the time. A lot of this goes on subconsciously, okay? But in the past, when I didn't really have boundaries and I would get into a relationship, they would see the persona that I projected, and they got attracted to that. But in time, as their evolutionary brain started to test my integrity to really see if if I if I really believed what I said I believed. And for instance, maybe raising their voice or talking down to me, and talking disrespectfully to me. And before, when I didn't have boundaries, I didn't call that out. I didn't say, you're not going to talk to me like that. And because I didn't do that, I lost respect from those women that were in my life. And what happens in time, after they start testing your boundaries and your integrity, and they realize that you have none, well, there's it's something in their brain that says, well, maybe I need to take the reins. Maybe I need to be in charge. So then they step into what's called more of the masculine role. Okay. And then basically in every relationship, you're going to have the masculine role and the feminine role. There's not going to ever be two masculine roles in a relationship. I mean, there could be, but one's going to be more feminine, one's going to be more masculine. And so when those women started leading, because I was unable to show real integrity and real boundaries and real conviction, since I wasn't able to do those, and a lot of that came through my addictions and my inability to put down these substances that I knew were killing me, especially at the amounts that I was taking them. So they would look at me, and there's just no way that they could have the kind of respect for me that they needed, seeing that I just had no boundaries. And so they would start leading. And quite honestly, I know they didn't want to, but they would start stepping into that leadership role, and then that would put me more into the feminine role and being taken care of. And a lot of that also came with, I just was a mess for a long time. Okay. But God set up the nuclear family, as some people would say it, but the husband and the wife, the children, godly, with their focus on God, integrity, and good Christian values. That's what works. That's what's worked for thousands and thousands of years. But the devil knows that's what's worked, and that's why he is trying so hard to tear down men in society and raise women up to be in that position of leadership and to be in that position of power over men. Okay? I'm not saying that men need to be controlling of women by any means, but God has ordained for men to step up and lead and protect and guide their family. It's not supposed to be the other way around. And when it becomes the other way around, the devil has a way of getting in there, and he has a lot more manipulation and power in a relationship where the roles are reversed. Okay, so for me, God saw I have a call of God on my life. It's not a boastful thing, but I just know that God has called me. He's called you if you're watching this channel. Okay, but the enemy saw that, and because he saw that my integrity and all my I just didn't have any confidence or any self-respect because of what had happened to me younger. And I walked around with that shame for so long. And then I started alcohol and drugs, and all those things helped me feel a little confident in the moment, but in the long run, they just tore up my confidence and my self-respect and my self-worth. And again, really, it's no fault to any of the women. I really, it was me. If I would have maybe I don't want to say put them in their spot, that's not the right word, but if I would have called out that bad behavior as I saw it and say, hey, we're not going to have this in this household, and you're not going to talk to me like that, then who knows? But I didn't, and I lost that respect along the way, and I put her into the leadership role, and it's made her very bitter towards me, and I'm sorry. If you ever watch this, I'm sorry. All right? I didn't do a good job by you, but it is in the past, and I have to move on, and I have to develop and learn from my mistakes and learn from those relationships where I didn't have boundaries. And that's what I did in this relationship. This one that I just got married, I talked about it in the last video. I'll leave a link below if you want to check that out. I don't really do much except for talk about the wedding and some of the circumstances surrounding it falling apart but being put back together. So anyway, go check that out. But when we started in our relationship, we had both been through two failed marriages, many failed relationships, and so we were coming in, with quite a bit of emotional damage. Okay, and but I had just gone to rehab, and I had just learned that by creating these new neural pathways that led to emotions of self-respect and self-worth, that I could reconfigure my thinking and reconfigure my life and reality in my brain to experience the joy and contentment that I do today. But at the time, I just knew that it had to start with boundaries. Like, I didn't really know. I just knew that I had to stand on what I believed in, and know my worth as a child of God. And there was a few times, again, no fault to her. It's a lot of evolutionary psychology type things, but she and maybe it was just bad neural pathways from when she'd been in relationships before and didn't treat her man right because he wasn't leading the family right. There was just some times where she almost tried to move into that leadership role, and again, I don't think she was wanting to, but it was just that test. Is he going to let me? Is he really going to lead like he says he's going to lead? Does he really have as much integrity that he says he has? And thankfully I did. And there was quite a few times, not quite a few, I'm sorry, that's not true. There was a few times that I did have to call it out and say, look, we're not doing that, you know? And I've also had to teach her, because she's a very passive person. And so over time, there people in her life have started to walk on her and just not respect her, and that's because she didn't respect herself. But I've pushed her to start respecting herself and to enforce those boundaries, and she started to enforce those boundaries, and she started to face the uncomfort that comes with setting those boundaries and enforcing them. It's never fun to go and say, hey, don't talk to me like that. It's easier just to kind of be like, all right, but it's not good, because then that sets in, and then that it damages the respect and the relationship for each other. So you have to know what your boundaries are and what your convictions are, and you need to stand on them and stay with them. Okay? Do not let any other person talk to you like you're not a child of God. You don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to be coarse about it, but you can call it out. And so, especially in a relationship, especially when you're trying to develop a relationship romantically or just a friendship, you gotta put your boundaries and stand on them. And they may be upset with you for a moment, but they're going to gain so much respect for you. I have gained so much respect from my wife because of those things. And I'm not just walking around all the time, stop there, don't talk to me. It's very, like I said, it's been a very few amount of times. And they were just kind of tests. However, by calling out that test and saying, no, I have earned so much more respect than I even had before. And it has been uncomfortable with her enforcing those boundaries with the father of their children and some of the people that used to be in her life that didn't talk to her well, but her confidence and her self-worth has just soared, and she's starting to understand who she is as a child of God, and what it means to not let people disrespect you, and to stand on your integrity and stand on your values. And it's such a great feeling when you're being authentic and true to yourself. And that's how boundaries can be used in relationships. But when it comes to addiction and substance abuse and alcohol and pornography and things like that, you're going to have to stay away from them. I had a lot of sober stints over the years where I had abstained from alcohol or drugs, but I wasn't free. I was just trying to stay away from those things. but I didn't do a good job because I would still go hang out with the people, or I'd still try to watch the same TV and listen to the same music, and I would just, kind of tiptoe around and get close to those boundaries. I would get close to those limits that I had set for myself. And that's why I failed over and over and over, because I I didn't have any really boundaries for myself, protecting my integrity, protecting what I believed in. And when I didn't respect those boundaries on myself, I lost respect for myself. Boundaries equal respect. But that doesn't mean that you need to be going around in the bars and around to all the drug places trying to say you shouldn't drink and I don't drink and you should enforce your, all that's going to do, trying to enforce your boundaries on someone else, all that's going to do is put them off, and it's going to make them go further away from good truth, good foundation. Okay? So just set your boundaries and stay true to them. And that's what people will see. That's what will make people want to set boundaries for themselves. They can come ask you, "Hey, how come you've had so much success in this area?" Well, I set boundaries and I stick to them. So don't be going over to the same people's house. Don't be going to the same restaurants. Do something different if you want different results. Okay? Boundaries not only are good for keeping the external threats away from our integrity, but they're also used to just protect the gifts of God that He's given you. Our eyes and our mouth and our ears are all gateways to our soul. And if we're putting that pornography and we're putting those horror movies in, we're putting all that, trash TV, gossip stuff, if we're putting all of that into all that covetousness and all of that, I don't know, the whole world is so insecure out there. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But if we put all that in our head all the time, we're going to lose our gifts from God. We're going to lose our ability to use and hear and be aware of those gifts when we need them. So by you setting boundaries, you're not only setting yourself and keeping your integrity good, you're also setting yourself up to where you can use your gifts from God when they're needed. And you're keeping everything inside of your boundaries crystal clear and ready for use. And that's just what it means to be a powerful Christian. That's what it means to be a son of God. That's what it means to be a daughter of God. These things are so incredibly vital to your recovery. Really, like I said, to just live a happy life, a content life, a peaceful life. But if you are starting recovery from any kind of addictions, depression, anxiety, you got to set boundaries, because you obviously had not been setting good boundaries while all that was going on. All right. Hey, sorry I was a little long-winded on this one, but boundaries are so incredibly important, and I just wanted to get it out there. Thanks for sticking around. If you are still here at the end of the video, type down there, let's see, superfragilocalisticexpialidocious. I want to see if anybody actually knows how to spell that anyway. Superfragilocalisticexpialidocious. Please type it down below so I know that you are still here. It's okay if you misspell it. Anyway, smash the like for me. Just smash it. Smash the like. Smash it. Just smash the like. And comment. Oh, you commented. Let's see. And smash. Subscribe. We've gone all over everything. I love you guys. Thanks for sticking around. Peace!